Josh Hennig along with Alex Barron is back in the 97.3 ESPN studios on 97.3 ESPN. Yeah, it did escalate quickly because it feels like we're finally getting people hired for jobs. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be taking the Inzer himself, Mike McCarthy, as their next head coach. Get into all that news and more. NFL insider Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press joins us here on Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN on NFL Championship weekend. Rob, we get another coach hired. How you doing today?
What's going on, guys? Tomorrow's one of the best days of the year with the Championship Sunday, for sure.
Absolutely. So, but we want to get into first all this coaching stuff with you, Rob. So today, and by the way, you know, I'm selfishly patting myself on the back a little bit. Mike McCarthy was the guy who I thought the Steelers were going to hire. They hired him today. But was it, Rob, as simple as he knows the organization, he's a local guy? Is it really that simple, or do you think there was more to it than that?
I think there's a lot of – when you think of the Steelers organization and the stability that they often look for, I don't know that they knew that Bill Cowher or Mike Tomlin were going to end up being guys who were there a decade plus. But when you look at Mike McCarthy, given his track record of success in Green Bay, and even though he didn't accomplish anything much in the playoffs with the Cowboys, he did have 3 double-digit win seasons in a row. He's had a track record of success. He's a great head coach, and he's not the new young candidate, right? The up-and-coming rising coordinator. He's somebody who is been very much entrenched into the NFL, and I think that fits what the Steelers look for. They want stability. They don't want to be turning over their head coaching search every couple of years and do some of the things that teams like the losing teams do. They want to bring somebody in here who can win and maintain excellence. Tomlin didn't get fired. He steps down, although he was under a ton of scrutiny. Never had a losing season in all those years, and the critics point to the fact that he only won 1 Super Bowl, and that was way back when. So I think it's a safe hire, if that's a word that we can use here, in that you know what you're getting, and you should be able to build upon a playoff team, and they've got some holes that they've got to fill. They got to make a decision on the quarterback situation. Aaron Rodgers is very familiar with Mike McCarthy, and if they want to bring him back for a year while they groom a rookie or someone that they feel could be the next guy, it makes a ton of sense. And I think that's something that could fit well for McCarthy, is having familiarity with Aaron Rodgers, but still they need a quarterback eventually of the future. And we know that Mike McCarthy's worked well with young quarterbacks too over the years. So I think it's a good, safe hire with some upside, and I don't really see much downside to it from the Pittsburgh standpoint.
So a team that is still in the market, Rob, for a coach, that being the Philadelphia Eagles, they are still in search of their OC position. Let's start with this. For you, what do you think what is your perception of this this offensive coordinator search? Because, there's a lot of speculation out there, some of it completely fraudulent, others of it, is more reasonable about how, the Eagles, that job is not for everybody, right? Not everybody is going to fit into that job and do what they need with it. Is that a fair assessment?
I think Philadelphia is not for everybody,
right?
And the job goes with it. There's a lot involved there. If you look at it from an organizational standpoint, you're talking about a team that has a top of the league reputation as far as ownership, management, just first-class organization, wants to win, commitment to winning. So those are certainly pluses. Then you look at it from a talent standpoint. You've got, although an aging in some ways offensive line, you've still got components of what's been a dominant offensive line. You've got certainly a ton of talent at the skill positions, and we've got to see how things play out with A.J. Brown, and a running back who is all-world and a quarterback who's been a Super Bowl MVP yet still needs great coaching around him. So I think from those two areas, when you look at it, it's a job that would intrigue a lot of guys. And I know a lot of guys were interested, and they wanted to hear from the Eagles. And some, in many cases, they have their representatives reach out to the Eagles and say, hey, we'd like to be considered for this. Now, you start to look at the criticism that the job gets, because a lot of people will like to say that this is not an attractive offensive coordinator position. And why are folks saying that? It's for various reasons. Some being that the Eagles have two out of the last four became head coaches, and then the other side of that is two of the last four lasted 1 year and got fired. So if you do your job and do it well, you might use it as a springboard to a head coaching position. If you don't do your job well, you're going to be gone, and you're going to be gone quickly. Someone's looking for stability, this may not be the job for them. If someone's looking for an opportunity to jumpstart, springboard their career, it could very well be that opportunity. Nick Sirianni is an offensive-minded head coach. However, he has shown that he's willing to let the right guy control the offense. And even to a fault this year with Kevin Petullo, we don't know exactly how much of Nick Sirianni's influence and footprint was on the play calls, and the offense as they struggled, but still, it was Kevin Petullo's offense. So it should be your offense. This isn't like going into Kansas City and you've got Andy Reid, or going to the Rams and you've got Sean McVay, guys who are going to be or San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan. Sirianni's taking a back seat to it. So that should be somewhat appealing. Some of the other negatives that I've heard is Eagles fans, the Petullo egging of the house situation, how that plays when you're a young family or the wife. And I can't tell you everybody feels about that the same way. You can look at the talent, and everyone should be excited about the talent. You should look at the organization and feel great about the organization. But some folks may look at that. I'll say what comes along with being part of Philadelphia and the fabric of Philadelphia is having a passionate fan base. And part of that is when you struggle, they're going to let you hear it. Some people are wired to deal with that. Some folks are not. Some don't want that. They would rather be in a city or a town that embraces them, that treats them like royalty, and isn't going to egg their house when things go bad. So there's some validity to that, but how much that plays a role in, or how much that plays a factor in, I think also it depends on the guy. If you're just an offensive coordinator candidate, then you're going to be more interested in this position. If you're a guy like Mike McDaniel, Brian Dable, others who are also potentially getting head coaching interviews and offensive coordinator interviews, and it's funny to me, John, what's happened this year, where you've had guys accept positions but still continue to look for a head, like Mike McDaniel. Well, if he doesn't get a job, he's going to be the offensive coordinator for the Chargers, but he's still looking for a job, right? And that's been a little bit different than what we've seen in previous cycles. But I think guys like that may be a little deterred, more so because they're still looking to be a head coach, and this is their fallback option. I think there's still some great candidates out there, and I know people want to criticize the Eagles for not making a move quickly. Let's see how things play out this weekend, and who advances and who doesn't, and who becomes available there. And let's not forget that Joe Brady, the Bills just fired Sean McDermott, and now Brady's available too as well. And if you ended up with Joe Brady after all of the conversations and the interviews, I think they would have done very well.
Rob, speaking about the Bills, it's been reported that they're looking to interview Phillip Rivers. Now, in my opinion, when you're in these win-now situations, just like how the Eagles were last year, bringing in Kevin Petullo, is it smart for these win-now teams to bring in guys who have no experience in that play-calling field?
I don't know how serious that interview was. I know they did it. I know there's a relationship between Phillip and Josh Allen, and I wonder how much of that was, let's just interview we just fired our head coach. They're at a slight disadvantage with some of the rules and who they can speak to and who they can't speak to because they fired McDermott so late they can't talk to any candidates on teams that are still playing. So there's 4 teams right now that they haven't been able to interview any of those assistant coaches, whereas some of the other teams who already had a head start on it were able to interview some of those guys. So they do have a lack of a less – their pool is smaller than some of the other teams. So given that, and what we've seen is a lot of teams like to interview as many candidates as possible. I don't think it hurts to interview Phillip Rivers. I would be hesitant to think that a guy who hasn't been a head coach in the NFL, high school is a little bit different. I know he's played in the NFL. He just came back and played in the NFL. I don't know how that would translate. I wouldn't say he definitely couldn't do the job, and you don't know until he actually does it. But I think that was more of let's give him an opportunity and just check off another. There's a lot of interviews of guys who I don't think really are legitimate candidates because teams are now bringing in 12, 15 candidates, right? The Cleveland Browns are doing things entirely different with their essay and their tests and all this stuff that I think is turning away some potential candidates. So if this somehow got serious with Phillip Rivers and the Bills, I'd be really surprised because obviously there are candidates out there who are more experienced and have had success doing it. And it would surprise me because, as you said, they're in a win-now mode. Their window with Josh Allen, and he's still a young guy. He's about to turn 30. He can be playing for another decade or Tom Brady like for 15 more years if he wants to. But their window is to win now, and it would really surprise me if you don't bring in somebody who's done it, it's been successful, and can take you over that hump because that's what they're looking for, a Gruden to what Dungy did in Tampa Bay or Kubiak and John Fox in Denver, somebody who comes in with the team and then gets them to go to a Super Bowl and win it.
AP senior NFL insider Rob Maaddi joining us here on Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN. Rob, I want to ask you another side of this coaching thing because we get the NFL championship games tomorrow, and how much of some of these teams playing the long game with these coaching searches has to do with some of the teams that are in the championship game tomorrow? We've heard names like Nathan Shieldhouse and other guys who are in the championship, Clint Kubiak. Like, how much of those guys having to prepare for the game tomorrow are teams saying, look, we still haven't been able to interview everyone we want. Some of the guys we want to interview are on those teams.
Yeah, I think that the games and the results tomorrow will have a big impact because, and Davis Webb is another name, right, in that category. Clint Kubiak, Vance Joseph, these are guys who have interviewed with teams, and if they become available and their team loses, you can see a couple more of these jobs fill up. And if not, and they got to wait, it could be back to what we see quite often is it looks like a guy's going to be the candidate and he's at the Super Bowl, and hopefully for the team he's on, he doesn't pull a Jonathan Gannon and his focus is on the Super Bowl as opposed to his next job. So I think it's going to play a big role in it. We'll see. I would anticipate 2 or 3. We're down to, with McCarthy working on and finalizing his deal now with the Steelers, and that could be done in the next day or so. I don't think it'll drag like Harbaugh took a few extra days. We'll be down to 4, and I think we could see probably 2 more, maybe even 3 more this week before we get to the Super Bowl. And then obviously if all 4 aren't filled, you know that whatever vacancy is left, those teams are targeting the guys who are on the 2 teams. So a lot to be determined tomorrow. Obviously a lot of exciting football, hopefully, despite having a backup quarterback. But I anticipate Stiddy being maybe a Nick Foles-ish type backup, somebody who can step in and actually have some success.
I don't know if I go that far with Foles. I kind of view Stidham maybe more like a Jeff Hostetler, where like he's probably better than people think he is, but they're not going to ask him to win the game all by himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he kind of plays more like Hostetler. He can. Hostetler was more of a scrambling type than Foles. I don't have them winning. I have them covering though. I think they'll keep that game close. I anticipate that game being tighter than, and I know the line switched too. It was like 5.5, went down to 4 or 4.5 or whatever. So it's going to be. I feel horrible for the Broncos and for Bo Nix. Like you get to that point and you lose your starting quarterback. I just want to see the best possible football out there and the best games for everybody. And Seattle and the Rams is going to be really interesting. When I looked at that game, I just can't. To me, it came down to quarterbacks. Who do you trust the most, and who would make that mistake? Sam Darnold's got 7 picks and 13 sacks, I believe, in the last 3 games that he's faced the Rams, including last year with the Vikings. So I think he's a little bit more prone to a bad play here or there.
I would just remind folks that when it comes to these lines, remember that when that sharp money comes in, that's when those lines move, and a lot of sharp money came in on Denver to cover at home. So, folks, don't read too much into the line movement, because sometimes that's just the odds makers trying to make their money back. Big.
Yeah.
But really quick, the other game, the NFC Championship game. I mean, what is going to be the difference in that game, Rob? I think it's going to come down to which defense is able to make a play, because these are two offenses that can put up points. I think it comes down to, which defensive front. Seattle's got a great one. The Rams got a great one. I think whoever's defensive front goes out and makes a play is going to win the game.
Going into last week against the Bears, the Rams had given up 30 points on average over the previous 5 weeks on defense. And they obviously settled down against the Bears and had a tremendous defensive effort, except for that 4th and forever where Caleb Williams ran 30 yards back and just heaved it up for a miraculous touchdown. But their defense was underachieving for me, and they finally stepped it up last week. You got the highest scoring offense against the league's stingiest defense. That's a great matchup. That's exciting when you see that. I think Seattle can score in a variety of ways. Rashid Shaheed obviously is a guy who he's a potential home run threat every time he touches the ball. They've scored on defense. They've got talent on defense at all 3 levels. Leonard Williams in the interior of that line. Ernest Jones, I think he was second-team All-Pro. Witherspoon, Eamon Worry in the secondary. So they've got a lot of talent. And then, of course, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, and Matthew Stafford having a career year at age 37. This one's going to be fun. Sean McVay against Mike McDonald. To me, this is going to come down to the very end. My upset specials this year were, I believe, 15-5. Here we go. 15-5 against the spread, my upset specials, and the Rams are my upset special. I'm taking whatever the points are, and I'm taking them to flat-out win 27-26.
I like it. He is Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press, at Rob Maaddi on the X platform, at Real Rob Maaddi on Instagram. Check out all of his coverage of the NFL at apnews.org, as well as all of his football coverage and his conversations over on YouTube. Rob, I always appreciate you jumping on. And folks, don't forget about Faith on the Field, heard Saturday and Sunday mornings right here on 97.3 ESPN. Miss any episode of Faith on the Field, just search for it on your favorite podcasting platforms. Enjoy the weekend, Rob, and I know you'll be much warmer than we are up here.
Oh, yeah. Stay safe in that snow. Build me a snowman. Send me a picture. I appreciate it. You guys keep up the great work.
Thank you, Rob. Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press joined us here on Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN.